Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review. I'm Jason Walker here with a tea that since you're watching this tea review, I suppose you already knew that I had a tea. Scooping out enough of this particular tea. This is a kind of Puer, a loose leaf Puer. I'll scoop out enough to cover the bottom inch to inch and a half diameter of my 3-ounce gaiwan here. That looks pretty good. Water's been brought to an early boil, started to rumble. Not a full rolling 212-degree boil. Want enough water, a little bit should rest above the rim of my lid. Yeah, like that. When I put the lid on, keeps the air out, keeps the air from changing the color of the liquor as it's exposed to the air, as it oxidizes. So, while that's sitting and steeping for a moment, introduce this tea. This is from Verdant Tea. This is their Master Han's 2014 wild picked Sheng Puer. Now, wild picked meaning, well, before I get into that, 1 ounce, I should mention, available for $12.50, $12.50. And this particular tea is picked in a national forest preserve, or a portion of, where certain people have permissions or access to go into the preserve and pick teas from certain areas within that forest preserve, so that these are wild. These are considered wild or wild-grown tea trees. This is in Yunnan province. This is from the Mount Ailao National Forest Preserve. It was mentioned this was 2014. This was harvested in spring of 2014. According to the product information on Verdant's website or product page. What else can I tell you? Puers can get rolled, can get pressed into cakes or bricks, or loose is often possible as well. Information about Master Han and what he does with his teas. Sometimes it appears that he harvests his teas and produces a black tea, or a Puer, or depending on what's going on with that particular tea and what he feels is the most suitable. So, having said that, can I introduce this tea, talk a little about this tea, talking about the dry leaf, wet leaf, and the liquor, starting here with a little bit of the aroma here. Breathing on it, releasing a little bit more of the aromas in there. There's a sweetness in here. There's a sweetness that's like, my first thing that came to mind was sorghum, or kind of molasses. There's a sticky, syrupy vegetative plant type of sweetness. Again, but sorghum gets heated to draw out some of that. That's in the way that it's processed. So there's a bit of that whole sorghum type process going on there. Scooping out a few of these leaves now. Leaves are long, fairly wiry. A little bit of variation in color. I do see some silvery looking leaves. Most of these look to be individual leaves. Leaves can vary in size. There are some that are an inch. There are some that are closer to 2 inches. You have some that are younger, silvery, fuzzy looking leaves that are more tip-like. You have some that are a bit more of an olive drab, look a little bit darker, and older, more mature leaves. You have some browner leaves as well, moving more towards a little bit of almost a chocolate brown, a milk chocolate, a lighter brown type of color. I see some stem where some maybe multiple leaves were connected at one point, but not now in these particular stems. So, a little bit of variation in color there, variation in size. Needle-wise in that particular scoop, maybe 10% was young, fuzzy, silvery-looking leaves or tips or needles. Now, so I'm going to go ahead, get into the pour here to be able to talk about the wet leaf and the liquor. Middle finger and thumb are going to hold the bowl, index finger keeps the lid angled to the side and in place there. Leaves happen to line up to give a fairly smooth pour that time. A nice cascading pour there, not a dribbly pour. So that was good. Set that off to the side. Start to look at these wet leaves for just a moment. Give that a shake and let those leaves kind of settle back down to the bottom. Get a whiff here. Beany notes that can be that I have found in green teas, some Chinese green teas, that depending on what kind of heat has been used and how it's been heated to dry those leaves, some of that seems to be going on here. So in that sense, that's not necessarily an aroma I get from a Puer. Now, considering that this was harvested in spring of 2014, and this is summer of 2014, not a lot of aging has taken place with this particular tea. Puers, many will recommend that a Sheng Puer like this kind of get set to the side and aged for a while, depending on what it is, how it's been processed. Especially like if it's been pressed into a cake, you might see people setting those to let them just kind of mellow for a year or a couple of years or so. Pulling out a few of these leaves and just laying them on my lid here, inside of my lid. Leaves are intact, a little bit of ragged edges on one of these leaves that I picked up. Very small blotches of oxidation here and there. A little brown, or I'm saying oxidation because it looks like some browning that may have taken place as the leaves got shaken or bruised or processed, or depending on how they were plucked or handled, or somewhere along the lines, some brownness got in there, some oxidation took place. Pulling out a needle or a bud, a tip there, just to show that that's there. Pulling out a stem piece that's connected to, looks like a portion of a leaf. Probably came off at some point. The leaf came up, broke off at some point. So you've got some stem. You've got some. Actually, these are fairly small leaves compared to the combination of leaves that make up some recipes. If you say of Puers. So, and I should also say, yeah, younger. These to be able to be fairly tender leaves, not as thick as some can be. So I'm going to leave that there. Move on now to the liquor and give that a swirl and hold it up to the light. That is a fairly yellow color, moving off to a light tinge, more of a orange-brown type of color there. Okay. Give it a pour here, give it a smell for just a moment. These are the green aspects of the aroma coming out now. A light hay, dried hay, stored hay smell coming off. A little bit of the beany aspect coming out. A little bit of sweet boiled corn coming off there as well. In the taste here, the hay aspect hit first, or I'd say was the dominant. Followed by the hay, which gives it kind of a starchy type of feel to it, texture as well. Followed by some of the beany. And underneath that, you get a little bit of that sweet corn, starchy sweet corn kind of taste. starchiness also kind of reminds me of having eaten a slice of raw potato. You finish the raw potato, you still have that kind of that starchy taste and feel, drying type of feel in your mouth. Toasty bitterness rising up into my not bitterness, toasty beaniness kind of rising up into my nose, indicating some kind of heat notes from in the way that the leaf was treated. Aftertaste, light astringency, relatively light astringency, no bitterness really. Flavors, aromas, still lingering, not very pronounced, still kind of hay and slightly corn-like, dropping off now. Looking at this tea. Loose leaf Sheng Puers are not the kinds that you first think of when you talk about putting them away for storage, letting them mellow, letting them develop character over time. So I don't know that it's fair or useful to really talk about setting this tea aside and what it would do later compared to doing the same thing with a Puer cake of Sheng Puer. So you kind of have, that kind of pushes you to evaluate what it is now and less of what it could become, because there's less potential there as far as what it could become. Looking at this tea as it is, not a lot of necessarily complexity, not a lot of Puer characteristic there. It's got a little bit of the green tea characteristic, a little bit of Puer characteristic. So I don't. This one's tough. I would probably give this one an 86. This is the taste experience of a young Puer. If you like the taste of young Puer, but again, many Puer connoisseurs will often either talk about tasting a tea now to see what kind of potential it may have based on their experience of developing a Puer, and will then therefore say, yes, it has potential. Let it sit for a year or a period and mellow. So come back to Walker Tea Review then to find out about Puers, other kinds of Puers that you may want to consider, other teas that are worth exploring. Go to the email subscription, newsletter subscription, where you can get tea reviews delivered directly in your inbox. Subscribe to the member content, which is a separate section, so you can read the articles, the more in-depth public pages that are written there about aspects of Puer, Oolong, dark teas, if you've never really explored dark teas, and the people of tea as well.